Welcome to an introduction to Museums for All for prospective participants. My name is Ashley Jones, and on behalf of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, I'm pleased to welcome you to an informational webinar about one of our national initiatives, Museums for All program. There are 3 speakers on today's webinar. In addition to myself, we will be hearing from Brendan Cartwright, who is the program manager at the Association of Children's Museums, and he's the coordinator for this special initiative. And for a participating museums perspective, we will also hear from Amber McCammon, who is the curator and director of programs at the Virgin Islands Children's Museum. So to set the stage for more detailed information that we will be sharing about the program, I'd first like to present some general introductory information. So what is Museums for All? Museums for All is a cooperative venture with the Association of Children's Museums with the goal of expanding access to the nation's museums by offering free or reduced admission for EBT or electronic benefit transfer card holders. And over the past 6.5 years of this initiative, which started in 2014, IMLS has been working closely with ACM to recruit museums as program participants, meaning that member museums are united in an effort to provide increased access to those who might not otherwise be able to visit their sites. That's really one of the strengths of this nationally branded program, is name recognition. Another strength of the program is that the access provided by the program is not limited to specific days or certain times. Museums for All participants are dedicated to providing access to everyone during their normal operating hours, every day of the week. We began the program with a pilot for the Children's Museum community, but since then, participation has been open to all museums around the country. And we are happy by how much the program has grown and flourished, but there's always room for more museums to participate. So I'm going to hand it over now to Brendan Cartwright to present the initiative's guidelines.
All right, thank you, Ashley. The goal of Museums for All is to be easy for all museums to adopt and potentially to adapt. We have a set of broad minimum guidelines that make it an easy to use program ready out of the box. These guidelines include offering a general admission rate of no more than $3 per person for up to 4 people when one individual displays a SNAP EBT card from any state. This is an easy way to identify a visitor who qualifies as having a financial need in a minimally intrusive way. Museums have the freedom to decide whether what their admission will be. You know, it can be free, $1 per person, $2 per person, etc., and are only obligated to offer that price for a basic general admission. If there are add-on attractions at your or exhibits, you're not obligated to include them in your Museums for All offering. The Museums for All rate would be offered during all normal operating hours, though, as Ashley mentioned. And as I said, museums can adapt their offerings as well. They can include WIC or Medicaid or other forms of identification that they accept for the Museums for All rate. They can include discounts on the special exhibits or events if you like, and some museums choose to offer a discounted membership. So we have seen massive success for this program so far. In the 6.5 years that it's been going, over 700 museums have begun participating. This includes museums in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the Virgin Islands, who you'll hear from later. We piloted the program in children's museums, but now every type of museum is represented. We have history museums, art museums, zoos, aquariums, multiple presidential libraries, and so on. Museums in cities, in rural areas, large museums, and small. And here's our fun graphic of a visual representation of where there are museums participating in Museums for All. It's everywhere. But in case you're wondering how your particular region is doing, We have it broken down by the various regional museum associations. New England looks like it's lagging a bit, but there are over 30 sites there that are counted under the single banner of Historic New England, so it's doing pretty well. Many states are doing well. California, Ohio, and Pennsylvania right now have the most participants in them. And as I mentioned, the Museums for All program was piloted in children's museums, which is one reason we see the large number of children's museums that participate. We've seen quite a lot of enthusiasm in history museums and art museums lately. Some of these museums are free admission anyway, but they choose to participate to really drive home their commitment to extending the invitation to every member of their communities. And as you can see, there's been steady growth over time. With our latest round of reporting, we are at over 3 million visitors that have used Museums for All, the Museums for All program to visit a museum. The visitors number has taken a little bit of a knock this year due to the shutdowns that occurred in most of the country, but people are still using this program. A similar program to Museums for All is Blue Star Museums, which gives free admission to military members and their families during the summer. Around 2,000 museums participate in that. And Museums for All, which runs year-round and is aimed at helping families with financial need, is over 33% of that total. So we're pretty pleased. One phenomenon that we've begun tracking are hub cities, or cities that have 3 or more museums that participate in Museums for All. And as you can see, there are many big cities that you might expect, like New York, LA, and Chicago are on here. But there are also places like Greenville, South Carolina, Missoula, Montana, Springfield, Illinois. In a hub city, museums can work together to really strengthen their Museums for All offerings. They can also recruit other museums to join, or at least demonstrate the benefits of joining. And we've seen that in places like Richmond, San Antonio, Pueblo, and Grand Rapids. If any of you are in the Columbus, Ohio area, you might have seen the news today or yesterday about the 6 museums there that are putting forth their Museums for All concerted initiative, working together. So we'll talk a little bit more about hub cities later, and we'll also hear some firsthand accounts about recruitment. All right, registering for Museums for All is very easy. We have a dedicated website, www.museumsforall, with the number 4, and there's a button to register there. The actual process should take less than 5 minutes, and it's free to do. We provide support materials like access to branded collateral. We have a group site. We host virtual hangouts, webinars like these, and more. And we'll also send you a window cling to use at your site. There's a searchable map on the website, and all the participating museums are listed there. Some of the other resources that we provide include previous webinars that have been archived, infographics that you can use on social media, press release templates, examples of every state EBT card, and staff training recommendations. We periodically create and add more resources, so don't be shy in telling us what you'd like to have. And we're in the process of creating some resources specifically for those hub cities that I mentioned, something that will provide even more benefit to getting that designation. So now we've talked a bit about the background of Museums for All, gotten an idea of who's participating and what kind of support is offered. So now Ashley will let you know about why participating in this program can be valuable to your museum.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. So now I'm going to talk with you a bit more about the value of participating in Museums for All. So we've told you all about the guidelines and who is participating in the initiative. And now I imagine you're probably wondering, well, why should we join Museums for All? And there are so many reasons to participate, but most importantly, it affirms that museums are meant for all members of their community and that participating museums are committed to equitably expanding their community outreach. And what's great is that this effort typically fits easily within a museum's mission, vision, and inclusion plan. And also, Museums for All is yet another way to increase community access to your research, your collections, your programs, and your exhibition, as it reduces all barriers. Additionally, we make it as easy for you as possible by providing free, customizable collateral, such as press release templates and branding opportunities to make it even more successful. And another benefit we're beginning to understand is the power of participation among multiple museums in a single city. Forming these hub cities is allowing museums to market the program jointly and thereby offering this menu of rich opportunities for families in their cities to work together to build new partnerships with social service organizations and other community-based organizations, and to have a louder and more unified voice when approaching municipal leadership and local funders for support. So here on this slide, we've shared a couple of comments from participating museums that we think show the evolving value of the program. The first from the San Diego Natural History Museum shows the power of participating in Museums for All as a group. And the second demonstrates the urgency of these types of opportunities, that with community members who are dealing with the impacts of COVID-19. But much better than reading quotes, we have with us a real museum participant. So I'm pleased to hand it over now to Amber McCammon of the Virgin Islands Children's Museum, who will talk more about their experience with the program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very pleased to talk about Museums for All. We love the program. We're also a Blue Star Museum, love that one as well. And I think Ashley's just going to go through the slides. I'll do a quick intro. I am the Director of Programs and Curator at the Virgin Islands Children's Museum. We're a very young, new and upcoming museum in a relatively small place. If you will go to the next slide, we are a U.S. territory, but we're quite a ways from the mainland. So if you followed Florida all the way down past Cuba and Hispaniola and just past Puerto Rico, you would find our islands. We've got 3 primary islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. And we service all of them as best as we can, but because of the water barrier, those that live on St. John and St. Thomas are able to access us most readily. And Museums for All help us invite the community in. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see the storefront or the museum's face there, and the island of St. Thomas, our beautiful waters. Of course, everybody likes to go to the beach, but it's hot, and after you've had some sunburn, you might need to do something different. So you can come into the museum and get some AC and some time, some quality time learning and exploring with your family. Next slide, please, Ashley. We have a number of different nationalities in our area. So the reason I'm kind of giving you this background of who we are is because I imagine many of you that are listening also come from relatively small places with diverse communities. The Virgin Islands really is just over 100,000 people. So we're like a small town, but we actually are reaching people from all over the world. We've got many people from Down Island, from all over the world, really coming from the Netherlands, from as far down as Trinidad and the United States, whether they're coming and living and staying for half the year, full-time residents, or visitors, tourists that come. We really are serving a very diverse clientele. We'll go to the next slide, and we'll show you some of the other museums that are in the territory. There aren't very many. We're a fairly small place, and these museums are spread out, as I said, over the various islands. And what we have found is that the locals really feel like these museums are not there for them. These are tourist destinations. So even, you know, many of you that might have a free open door type of museum, some of the locals still might not see it as something that they should be going to. It's for the visitors. It's not for them. We wanted to change that. We want to be a good community support for families, a place where they can come, explore, and play together, and strengthen those bonds. You'll go to the next slide. That's where Museums for All came in. Help us get going, and you know, as Brendan had said, I like the way he said that, extend the invitation. Extend the invitation to the locals, because that's what we're really here for. We're a nonprofit organization committed to supporting children and families of the territory, and we want to be as inclusive as possible. So we have a number of different programs to help make it very, you know, accessible to everyone, and Museums for All is a big one. So as people sign up for their EBT benefits, we have started to try to get the information out to the various human resources organizations, medical community, and you know, we also do various community outreach activities to let people know that they're welcome. We want you to come into the museum and utilize this space. It's for all. Next slide, please. So in our territory, of course, small area, small, gosh, how do I want to say, very, very distinct differences in socioeconomic status. So we've got some very, very super rich with wonderful, beautiful villas and mansions, and then we have a large low-income population as well. So we want them to have resources available to them. So anyone that signs up for their SNAP benefits, which is, as you see on here, can be quite a large portion of the community, can come in. Many of our families are single parent household, and whether that's a mother, father, or grandmother, grandparent, auntie, single parent homes, they need a lot of support and help, and we aim to do that. Next slide. As you know, COVID's been really tough on everybody, but before COVID, we had a fairly high poverty rate. You know, over 25% families with children were considered at the poverty level at the last census, and that number has gone up during these COVID times. So COVID, of course, has been super hard emotionally and financially on families. And even us, the museum, we had to be closed for a good 6 months, and we came up with ways to do outreach. But now that we've been able to open our doors, we've invited the Museums for All card holders, the SNAP card holders, to come back into the museum, and we have seen the numbers just steadily increase. People are taking advantage. They don't have a lot of money to go, you know, eat at restaurants, go to the movies, that kind of thing. They can come into the museum and still have that family time. Next slide, please. One of the reasons we wanted to be as inclusive as possible is, as I mentioned before, we want to be a resource for the community. And we've got, like many small communities, small town, you have lower educational demographics than you would like. So this is just a quick snapshot of one of our academic performance by grade. And you know, many of our young children are not prepared in multiple different areas of proficiency for their next level of education. So as a children's museum, as an education entity, we try to give another way, a hands-on interactive way to educate. Sometimes you don't even know you're learning. You're just playing, but you're learning while you play. And we just want to have that as another resource for everyone. All right, we'll go to the next slide. One of the ways that we got the word out about the Museums for All program is by utilizing some of the marketing materials that both Ashley and Brendan have told us about. We created a postcard flyer. You're seeing that on the screen now. You're seeing the front of that flyer. We brought those flyers and other posters and verbally told people, word of mouth helped spread the word that you could now come into the museum for a reduced admission. When you had that SNAP EBT card, we put out, social media blasts, put it out on Facebook and Instagram, and it took a little bit of time for the word to get out and people to start really feeling like, oh, they're talking about me. I'm being invited to come into the museum. But it is steadily started to grow. If you'll go to the next slide, I think this is where I might show you a little of that growth. Not quite. Still talking about how I got the word out there. We also talked about Museums for All at various, it's okay, at various outreach activities before the pandemic, of course. Any kind of community event, we'd go out and let people know, share our card. This is the back of the card that you're seeing here that just tells you what the program is all about, how much it is to come into our personal museum. We chose the $2 mark. It could be $0 up to $3. Your entrance fee for the Museums for All participants, we're going with the $2 a person. And we were able to secure some funding to help us offset those costs. So, I think Brendan will probably come back and talk a little bit about this, but there's various ways that you can go about, making this work for your museum. And for us, young, struggling nonprofit, we were very thankful that we were able to find a sponsor that is able to pay us back the difference of the cost of each admission that we've taken at the lower reduced rate. So the individual families that are struggling, they can come in for the reduced admission of $2, and then our sponsor at the end of the quarter will reimburse us for the remaining admission rate. So it's great. We're not losing out anything. We're fulfilling our mission of being an inclusive support system for our local families. So it's a win-win. All right, next slide. And the sponsor, of course, wins too. They have some good PR talking points and they can feel good about helping local families. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Cute little kid there playing in the museum. I will say that I've gone into Head Start is a really good way to get the word out, at least for us down here. Oftentimes the most underserved are the hardest to reach. And in our community, because we have such a diverse group that speaks multiple languages, that can be a barrier as well. So it has been really helpful to reach out to the Head Starts, and at the beginning of each year going in there, talking to them. There's usually a translator there, so I can speak in English and reach many, but then there's a translator that's also relaying the information in Spanish and Haitian Creole, which is just great, and really letting those people that are in most need of assistance and ways to connect and grow with their family. We can get the word out and let them know that they are welcome to come. We want them to come. The space is for them as well as the tourists. We also, of course, support various education entities. The educators have been thrilled. We have a lot of private schools. We have, of course, even the public schools don't always have funding to pay for field trips. So we come up with various ways to help them with transportation costs, and then with Museums for All, many of those families can you know, as they're giving the funds for the various field trips, they can give a smaller portion because they can pre-register with us. We've set up something on our website. Many families, either for a specific field trip or for just coming in general, they might not feel very comfortable showing their EBT SNAP card every time they visit, so they can pre-register with us. And that's something we set up in our museum. Again, that's why this is such a great program. You can really tailor it to your particular needs and your community and organization. So we set up so they can pre-register and they can get a day pass and not have to share that SNAP card, flash it every time they visit. If they're a little shy about that, they can share the other card that we issue to them when they visit. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So general community access, of course, that kind of touches on what I just said. You know, everybody can come in. You don't need to feel strange or shy or getting away with something. Absolutely not. This is what we're here for. And I've had, you know, teachers actually crying on my shoulder and hugging me and thanking me that there is this kind of resource in the community and that they could make it happen for their kids. Oftentimes we get school teachers that reach out to us and see how they could make it possible as kind of an end of the year treat to come and learn and play. But you know, year round summer camps, individual families, homeschool groups. We have a number of homeschool groups in the territory that try to come in and do specific science projects, utilize our space, utilize our incline plane or whatever resources we have. And even they, you know, sometimes need financial assistance. And this is an opportunity. This is a way that they can come in and still have fun. All right, next slide. All right, so I think that's the end of my portion. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, let you know how it's gone. I do want to mention before I turn it over to my co-speakers here, what kind of the general numbers are. It's grown and changed. Before COVID, as I said, it took a little time for the word to get out and people to believe it and start coming in and utilizing the Museums for All program, but it started just exponentially growing. And then of course the pandemic hit and we had to close and it stopped. Since we reopened, it's steadily gone up. And then in June, we reopened to a kind of a mixed model where you didn't have to book a time slot. We had open door for 3 days of the week, and it's tracking very, very high. I don't have a slide to show you, but I can tell you that from when we had to just do bookings to open door, it doubled in the 1 month, and I'm sure it's just going to keep going up all summer. It's been very busy in the museum. People are using it, and they're so thankful for it. Like I said, I get hugs, not just from teachers, parents come up to us all the time, and it's so endearing, so sweet when you see the little kids as they're going out giving you genuine, heartfelt thank yous on the way out the door. So I encourage you to check it out, see if it will work for your organization. It's a great help for the community. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amber. It's always great to hear, you know, the firsthand stories of how it's working out, both for the museums and for the visitors. So, but yeah, we'll move on with our presentation. And as I alluded to earlier, and as you well know, museums have been affected very greatly by COVID-19. Even now, most museums are operating at reduced capacity. There are some that are still closed. So in something of a surprise though, we've still seen about 8 museums a month continue to register for Museums for All, and it's been ticking up even more lately. And even if they're closed at the time, we've increased the number of participating museums during the pandemic by over 100, and it proves the continuing necessity of the program's mission. Unfortunately, it has been the case that some of the museums that were participating in Museums for All have had to close permanently, but really with just like 2 exceptions, every other museum has kept their commitment to offering Museums for All rates to its visitors. In fact, there have been a couple that have compensated for their reduced capacities by offering their Museums for All rates to every visitor. It's not something that you have to do, but some have. There are operational changes that have been made during the pandemic. Amber talked a little bit about some of the ones that they had done. So to ensure the reduced capacities, a lot of museums now require guests to buy their tickets online or at least to pre-register. It's a bit of a challenge to Museums for All visitors who merely had to show their SNAP EBT cards at the admissions desk before. So when you're building out these new admission systems, it's very important to keep in mind how your museum is still going to accommodate Museums for All visitors. Will you have an option at that ticket price on the menu? Will folks have to present their SNAP EBT card in person when they show up? Will you just direct Museums for All visitors to buy their tickets in person? There's no right answer, but whatever your museum chooses, it should be explicit and easy to follow on your website so folks know how to get their tickets. And when you're allotting the tickets by time, make sure there are enough for Museums for All visitors. On average, we see about 3% of a museum's attendance coming from Museums for All visitors. That does vary by type of museum, though. Amber can probably attest that we see it higher in children's museums. It's usually lower in art museums, etc. One other thing that museums have done during the pandemic, while they've been closed or unable to welcome as many guests as they'd like, is to really increase their community outreach. And whether that's offering virtual museum tours and activities or distributing STEM kits to schools, the museums are embracing their roles as community pillars and making active overtures towards their communities. And at its core, that's what Museums for All is all about: extending an active invitation to everyone, making sure they know that the museum is for them and that it wants them to be there. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And museums recognize that access and inclusivity are important bedrock organizational values. And Museums for All is one way to help out with DEAI efforts. And an organization's commitment to inclusivity usually extends beyond just Museums for All. And in fact, Museums for All works best when it's part of a suite of offerings. Many museums offer reduced admission for seniors, children, and perhaps educators or military. Many will offer some sort of monthly free day or even free memberships that can be checked out of the library. All of those are wonderful, and Museums for All supplements them rather than taking the place of any of them. And while the only requirement to participate in Museums for All is to accept SNAP EBT cards, several participants also accept WIC or possibly Medicaid. The Madison Children's Museum has 21 different identifications that it will accept for the $1 admission fee. So we leave it up to you. There's been a number of pandemic EBT cards that are out there, I think especially in Chicago, but I think all over. So, you know, you may decide that your museum wants to accept those as valid identification as well. We're not requiring it as part of Museums for All. We're sticking with just the SNAP EBT cards as the base requirement, but again, you're welcome to tailor it for your museum in your area. So about 10% of the participating museums also offer some sort of reduced membership program as well. They're taking the next step of getting people in the door on daily admissions and then turning them into members with more solid museum going habits. Some of them are also using the opportunity to catch visitors that Museums for All might be letting fall through the cracks. At the Omaha Children's Museum, they're expanding their reduced membership to include families that qualified for reduced school lunch rather than just the free school lunch schools. There are families that might just exceed the threshold of qualifying for food assistance, but still could find visiting a museum to be cost prohibitive. These museums are stepping up and supplementing Museums for All in other ways to try and catch as many of those families as possible. One part of joining Museums for All is broadening your visitor base, but another part is taking the time to work on assumptions and biases that exist within your own staff. One participating museum that was located in a college town was surprised to see how many grad students were using Museums for All to visit. They hadn't expected that many to be on food assistance, but there they were. There are some wonderful resources around diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion on the AAM website, and the Cultural Competence Learning Institute, or CCLI, is another fantastic way of museums looking to improve their own approaches to inclusivity. One complaint that does come up is why people on SNAP assistance deserve this admission discount, or to put another way, why can't someone not on food assistance get the same rate? For our purposes, a cutoff had to exist somewhere, and we felt that a government issued card would work well and the least intrusively to demonstrate the need for some help in removing a financial barrier. But one of the reasons why we think Museums for All works best as part of a suite of options is so that those who don't have a SNAP EBT card, they can have some kind of appropriate price be found for them. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley to talk about leveraging participation in this program.
Thanks, Brendan. So sometimes museums or their boards can be wary of joining Museums for All. They see that it calls for deep admission discounts in some cases, and they worry that it will be a hit to their budget. So we took a look to see if that would be the case. So the Museums for All evaluation we have shown here on this screen. In 2018, we engaged Aurora Consulting to do an evaluation of the program and the experiences that participating museums were having. And the complete results of that evaluation are available at the address here on the IMLS website. They're also available on the Museums for All website, which is museumsforall.org, the number 4. But on the next slide, we'll share some pertinent findings with you. So only one of the museums that responded to the evaluation reported a decline in their revenue since implementing the program. Most reported no change, or over a third of the respondents said they saw increases in ticket sales and attendance. And 25% saw increases in development revenue and membership and program sales. Museums for All is a great way to add new development streams, either soliciting funding that directly pays for the program or finding grants and sponsorships that will help. It's a great program that helps the entire community, and there are often foundations or banks or other funders that want to be a part of it, and this is encouraged. But most importantly, through the evaluation, we can see that there's no overall deficit to being a part of Museums for All, and oftentimes it can be a revenue generator. So one of the other things that we try to do with participants in Museums for All is connect them with other museum participants in their city or area that also participate in the program. We found that museums can do really great things with a collaborative effort to promote the program within their community. And as Brandon mentioned earlier, we've started calling cities with 3 or more participants hub cities. In December of 2018, we invited representatives from 7 of these hub cities, include San Diego, Chicago, Akron, Missoula, Chattanooga, Worcester, and Grand Rapids. to attend a convening so we could learn from them and determine how museums can best work together to get the most out of Museums for All. And from that convening, we found that several opportunities for cooperation exist, and not just between museums. They can use Museums for All as an entry point to either establish or deepen connections with local food banks or transit authorities in ways that can overcome other types of barriers that potential visitors face in making it to a museum. These actions can build trust within the organizations of a community and also with the people. It shows that the museums are serious about their commitment to having everyone visit. And the invitation that's being extended is genuine, and museums are willing to put in the work on their end to make it happen. They are spaces for everyone, truly. And the complete report from this Hub City convening is available on the Museums for All website. We invite you to review it. Again, that's museumsforall.org with the number 4. So if all of this sounds appealing to you, we want to remind you that it's very easy and also free to register for Museums for All. And here is that website, museumsforall.org, number 4. You won't forget it now. And here on this slide, we have provided some contact information for the 3 of us. We certainly hope that the information that we've shared today has interested you in becoming part of the Museums for All participant family. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. On this slide, you'll find the names and email addresses for Brendan, Amber, and myself. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have about the program. We've also provided a general mailbox, which is info@museumsforall.org, the number 4. And we encourage you to connect with us on Twitter for all of the latest Museums for All news. Our Twitter handle is @museumsforall, and that's the word for, F-O-R. So we look forward to connecting with you, and we thank you again for joining us for today's presentation.